Hi, philosophy friends. Today we're going to talk about love. Isn't that lovely? Um, so, um, I guess this unit is a little bit different from the previous ones. We're going to do somewhat less critical analysis of the texts per se and more sort of internal exploration of the concept of love in and of itself. But we're using this Solomon article and the excerpt from the symposium to just sort of get the ball rolling in our brain. And then hopefully, when you write your answers to after you read questions this week, you'll use it as an opportunity to sort of explore your own notion of love. Love makes the world go round, right? I hope that you all love someone deeply, and I hope that you feel that someone loves you deeply, whatever kind of love that is, right? The Greeks have defined historically at least three different kinds of love. Agape, which is like divine love. Eros, which is like sexual, passionate love, and philia, which is like familial love or platonic love, love of family or friends. So there's at least three different kinds of love, and I think we can love deeply. I hope we can love deeply in all those senses, but they are distinct. So we'll first talk about the Solomon just for a little bit. I like the Solomon article because of the way he characterizes love, not merely as a feeling or an emotion, but as a world, right? He calls it the love world. And he explains it as being a complicated thing, um, and a deep thing, and not a singular thing, but an interwoven thing. He compares it a bit to anger, just in the sense that there is a world of anger, right? There's the offender and the offended. There's, the various antagonistic sort of courtroom, you were wrong and they did this world of anger. It's like a drama, right? There's players, there's actors, there's characters. And he says similarly, the love world is a world where there are players, there are actors, right? There's individuals representing the various roles. Different, however, from anger, thank goodness, in the love world, it's more courtly, right? A romantic drama defined by its sense of elegance. It's spiritual. There's the lover and there's the beloved. And it's a world in which we narrow our vision and our cares to that single duality, all else becoming trifles, obstacles, or interruptions, right? A magical world in which an ordinary evening is transformed into the turning point of a lifetime. So the love world is, if you think about your fantasies of love versus your fantasies of anger, or your dramatic depiction of love versus your dramatic depiction of anger, and how those worlds are similar in the various components that are present in each, but the characteristics of the components are so completely different. So I like the Solomon in the sense that it gives a whole picture of love. It doesn't just say love is an emotion, love is a feeling. It's a story. It's a world. And so you'll think about that, right? He talks about the rules of this love world. And the Solomon gets us going there. And he even mentions at the end of the article the bit from the symposium that we're going to read. So let's talk briefly about the symposium. So the symposium is a Platonic dialogue. It is a dialogue written by Plato. It's, I would say, a medium length dialogue. I know that's a vague claim. And the symposium, if you read that first page of the symposium prior to our excerpt, the symposium is a collection of speeches about love that was given at basically a drunken party. Amongst the speeches given at the drunken party, all of the speeches were about love. This speech, the speech we're reading, is the speech that was given by Aristophanes. We are not reading the speech that was given by Socrates, which is the speech that probably represents Plato's notion of love. So this is important. So the depiction of love that we are reading about in our excerpt from the symposium is not Plato's account of love. What we are reading from Aristophanes is not what Plato thinks of love. We are reading just Aristophanes' speech. The reason we're reading it and not Plato's account is, well, it's a little bit simpler to understand. Plato's account is somewhat complicated. And as you might expect, Plato's account deals with the theory of form. So if you can recall back to the start of the semester when we talked about epistemology and we talked about Plato's theory of forms from the Republic, his theory of love is consistent with this notion of forms, it being something transcendent, being something universal, not a physical thing at all. So Aristophanes' notion of love is, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit of a silly story, but to some extent, I think it is consistent, maybe, with what some people hope love is. Often we hear people talk about this idea of soulmates. Now, I'm not exactly sure what it means for someone to be a soulmate. What does that mean? You're my soulmate? But we hear the term being used. Aristophanes' account of love, to some extent, explains this notion of a soulmate through a little bit of a silly story. So the story is that human nature used to be different, right? And that's what he explains here in the beginning, that there were three kinds of human beings, and this is how it was, right? Then these human beings were very powerful, and so the gods got cross at the human beings, angry, upset, and so as punishment, the gods split the human beings in two. So some human beings that were made up, there were a form made up of male and female elements. There were forms that were just male, and there were forms that were female, and they were like bound together, right? One side on one head and one side on the other head, like two people in one, right? So if you haven't watched the clip from Hedwig and the Angry Inch, it's connected, it's posted in the readings section for this week. So where it says this week's readings, and there's the symposium reading, and just below the symposium reading is this YouTube clip from a movie called Hedwig and the Angry Inch. The movie was there was a Broadway musical, Hedwig and the Angry Inch, and then there was this movie made, and then the Broadway musical has since been sort of revived. But if you've not seen this movie, you might want to watch the whole movie. It's a little bizarre. It's kind of like a rock opera. I don't know if you guys have seen The Who's Tommy, or Pink Floyd's The Wall. I would call both of those rock operas. I guess I would call this a rock opera, whatever that means. I'm not sure what the technical term is for rock opera. But Hedwig deals with gender identity and gender fluidity and love. So check it out. Anyway, watch it because it gives a really good visual and musical depiction of this story, of this speech of Aristophanes. So the idea is that the gods split the people in half because they were causing trouble for the gods, and then what love is, because we were once one was two. When the gods split us in half, we now long for our other half. So the longing for love is the longing for the desire to literally find your other half. He says, and so when a person meets the half that it is very own, something wonderful happens. The two are struck from their senses by love, by a sense of belonging to one another, and by desire. And they don't want to be separated from one another, not even for a moment. So that we are upset when we get split. When we get split, we long for our other half. Right? Since their natural, I'm going backwards now. Since their natural form had been cut in two, each one longed for its own other half. And so they would throw their arms about each other, weaving themselves together, wanting to grow together. Blah, 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 blah. This then is the source of our desire to love one another. Love is born into every human being. It calls back the halves of our original nature together. It tries to make one out of two and heal the wound of human nature. Each of us is a matching half of a whole human whole because each was sliced like a flatfish, two out of one. Each is always seeking the half that matches him. So by Aristophanes' account, each of us, unless we have found our other half, are incomplete, are not whole, are lacking in whatever this other part of me was. So there's something lovely about this and something disgusting about this to me at the same time. What's lovely about that is this idea that there is some other half and you're going to find this other half and two will become one and you will have found your other half and you were meant to be, in a literal sense, that you are each other's complete, thing. That's sweet. But the disgusting thing about it is the suggestion that I am not perfectly whole how I am right now. Why do I need something or someone else to complete me? Aren't I complete? So one of the things you're going to do this week for your after you read questions is look at two Shel Silverstein. They're children's stories. One is called The Missing Piece, and one is called The Missing Piece Meets the Big O. And we're going to look at these both as stories of love. And when we think about love, I guess I would like us to think about love, but then think about how our notion of love affects our notion of our own identity. And if our notion of love is something like, I'm whole, you're whole, and together it's cool, versus I'm incomplete and you're incomplete, and together we make one, or any other version of love that you might subscribe to, just to recall the unit on personal identity and think about how the way in which we sort of flush out the concept of love, how that impacts who or what I am as an individual. Excuse me. And if my notion of love strengthens my myself, or if it somehow diminishes myself. So that's really all I have to say this week. I hope you will enjoy thinking about love, and I hope you feel deeply loved by someone, and I hope someone feels deeply loved by you. And I'll talk to you soon.